Do you really know what's going on in your 401k? There are some out there that are doing some stuff that doesn't look so good. I call it the 401k faceplant. We talked about advisor fees, and we're talking a little bit more about that, but there's also fees that are built in to your 401k, and some more than others. Now, you're probably wondering, I wonder if mine is one of those. Let's find out. New study looked at over 58,000 401k plans, and they found that many are guilty of underperformance and excessive fees. One plan from a national airline holding more than $2 billion in assets underperformed and charged, get this, 64 times more in fees than the comparable benchmark. So, Greg, we talk about our fee analysis, and that's one of the places you're going to go. You're going to look at advisor fees, but you're also going to dive in there and find out what you're paying in investment fees. And a lot of people don't realize their 401k might be just chock full of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, 401ks are tough, right? There's not a lot of protections out there, unfortunately, regarding the fees. It's kind of criminal because you put this money in this account and it just disappears, right? You don't have to do anything. It just gets taken right off your paycheck. It goes into this account, and do not touch it till you're 59 and a half, Randy. You're not thinking about it. So imagine there's a super magic Twinkie and you're like, all right, dude, I'm going to put it in this closet, but I'm not allowed to eat it. And I rarely check in on it, but don't eat it. Right? There's this magic Twinkie, and then it's like, all right, I'm gonna put another Twinkie in there. I'm gonna put another Twinkie in there, and you don't really understand what's going on with the Twinkies because you're like, dude, it's 30 years till I can eat that thing, so I just don't really care, and it's exhausting to worry what's going on, so I just forget about it. So I stop logging into my account or opening the closet door to the magic Twinkies. I just stop opening it. So what happens? Maybe some mice get in there. Maybe some mold starts growing, but you don't know because you've got a life. You're not like, I can't wait to see what, my accounts did. So these 401k providers know this. They're not silly. They're like, all right, you know what? No one's checking in on the Twinkies. We can do whatever we want. Most people won't know. We can charge 64 times as much. That's how rude we are. Let's send the rats in, and they're going to gobble up the Twinkies. And unfortunately, over time, the compounding nature of these fees is devastating to a 401k plan. And the hope is that regulation is coming in that will actually help retirees, but it's the opposite. It's being harder to take money out of 401ks, believe it or not. It's harder for financial advisors to take money out because the system and the lobbies there are so bloated and rich and entrenched in our government that they actually want the money in there, and you just kind of forget about it. And Randy, how many people do you know that have got to the 59 and a half mark and then said, I don't really need it. I just live around it. I guess I just won't use it until I have to at 73 now. And then who's getting fat, man? You got some fat rats and mouses and a lot of weird Twinkies that have a lot of mold and funky monkey growing on it. And you just don't understand that because the door never gets opened, because that's the genius of this cabal of the financial industry, the 401k industry, all working together, knowing that they've essentially psychologically had you give away this money that you've never touched, you've never seen, never tasted the delicious Twinkie. They're delicious. I don't know if they make Twinkies anymore, but when I grew up, we had Twinkies and Swiss cake rolls and oatmeal cream pies. But I digress. The real magic here is to put your finger on it and understand, what am I being charged for every one of my funds? Because what really gets you in these 401ks are the fund costs. Because a lot of times there's not a financial advisor cost because if you're working, right, you got your company sponsored plan, and you have fund costs. So it's like, ask your provider has to give you this information. What is the fee? If that fee is over 0.5%, you should be raising an eyebrow. And that's kind of a rule of thumb. Like, is it really worth 0.5%? I had a money market that was charging almost 1% in our plan.
And how much was the money market paying?
Like, I don't know, like 3 Butterfingers and a Kit Kat. Like it wasn't even, I think it was just a cash account. I was just throwing money in. And I was like, I wonder how much this money market's charging. And it's because of the transparency. The door's shut, man. And they're hoping people don't pay attention, that the light switch doesn't get put on. And I think, again, one of the magic parts, and this transitions over when you leave your company, when a 401k gets, brought over, it's an IRA. And when you do that, the true fees can be exacerbated or they can be minimized. And I think everybody wants them to minimize. the costs that are coming out of their accounts. So what we run is our fee analysis that takes the statements and it just shows you, hey, here's how much you're paying your advisor and here's how much you're paying for those funds and investments. And it's in dollars. And then you can see in percentages and in dollars what you're paying on each one each year. And then you can see the performance and you can say, is this worth it? Right? Like to me, that is the ultimate value-based proposition. If they're charging more, they better make me more, right? That's just common sense. And if I'm getting charged a higher percentage, I should have more. I should get more. And by the way, spoiler alert, not the case. But anyways, you can see for yourself when you see when you see your own report and you break it down, you can see what you're paying. And to us, and everyone was like, oh, no, I know Chip is a good friend. I'm like, your financial advisor is a good friend, huh? I was like, would you consider him a good friend? Do you think he'd still call you on your birthday if you didn't use him and pay him $25,000 a year? Probably not. Well, it doesn't seem like a friend, right? Like paying someone $25,000, it doesn't seem like a prerequisite for friendship. So when we do this, trust me, they don't know. Like we just use a statement and we put it to our system. So they don't know. People are always nervous. Like, are they going to know that you're going to, I'm like, well, no, because no one wants to ask their person how much they charge. And the real irony, if you guys want to have some fun at their expense, ask your financial advisor for a breakdown of all their investment costs and their cost in dollars every year. And they will be in panic mode because they probably don't even know. They don't have systems that calculate that. They'd have to do it manually. And it would be really funny to watch them have to do the math for you. And then you can compare it to ours. We'll do it for free. And just bring your statements in. We'll build it out for you as part of every roadmap we do.
Another reason why the team at Golden Reserve is very different. There's a lot of people that charge according to the zeros in your account. At Golden Reserve, we don't. And we'd love to explain how that works to you and perhaps work in your favor. Give us a call. Give us a look at our website, getyourroadmap.com. All right, Greg, a recent study by the team over at Fidelity found that 72% of seniors, people who are in retirement, wish they had started a Roth IRA sooner. Almost half of them said they're now paying more taxes due to RMDs from their traditional IRAs and their employer 401ks. That's a big statement right there. We'll have to break that down. So let's talk about this a little bit. When somebody comes in and maybe they're 70 years old or maybe they're 72 years old, they're finally going to retire, but they've never done that discussion about moving money from a 1K or an IRA over to a Roth. These people are saying that is something I should have considered. What do we do? I mean, we don't have a time machine and go back in time. Let's tell people what the advantages are of this and why they should be thinking about it.
Sure. I mean, it's also I would tell everybody to take a deep breath. They didn't miss a huge opportunity here. Most people aren't, the compounding nature of Roths and the money they put in isn't as catastrophically different. It's just the pain of having to pay tax on taking money out of your 401k. That's really what this is. This is a annual teeth cleaning. That's what taking your RMDs are, right? You're like, oh God, I hate that fluoride treatment. It makes my mouth feel weird all day. Or it's like, man, that lady just gets a little aggressive with that sharp little hook thing. And I'm going to say something. If she gets in there again and I think she got it stuck. What? Is that thing stuck in my mouth? Is that guy got his foot on my shoulder? What is going on here?
And that's when they ask you a question, you're supposed to talk.
Yeah. So, RMDs are teeth cleanings. Like you got to pay taxes. Like you pay it in up front, you pay it in the back. It's not like it's all sugar. And when you pay it up front, people don't realize you have less money going in the account. Mm-hmm. So you have less money going in the account, which is growing now tax free. And alternatively, you have more money going in the account that you have to take tax on the back end. So you have this tax arbitrage plan, right? Where you're like, all right, what is going to be the least amount of tax I can pay? And I think, I just missed out. I need to put some money in a Roth. And I'm like, dude, you're 70. How much compounding do you think this is going to really, contributing to a Roth is about the compounding nature of growth because you're eating the tax up front, right? That's really the secret and the magic sauce is having, if you are a working 20-year-old and you're contributing to a Roth K, you're getting 30 or 40 years of compounding, which is a big deal. And you're never going to pay tax on it. Whereas if you're retired, the benefit of that is much less. And it's also a lot less where we used to be able to have these Roths that we gave to our kids and they could stretch them over their whole lives. So then you get another 20 or 30 years. Now you got to take it out in 10 years. So the tax, I'm not saying Roths are bad. I'm going to give a bunch of statements. You always got to be careful on comments on YouTube. Everybody's going to be like, Greg hates Roths. Like, I don't hate Roths. I'm just thinking they're a little bit overhyped. It's a little bit of an overhyping in most scenarios. I think what is more meaningful is addressing the issues in your current plan. And most people's current plans have a big taxable, big taxable 401k. I think, you see the studies. Most people's retirees are comprised mostly of qualified money, 401ks, IRAs, things that they've accumulated over their working years, and it hasn't been taxed yet. So your question is, how do I get this out? Because everyone tells you how to put it in. No one tells you how to take it out. Mm-hmm. So for us, this was another aha moment, going back to just the common sense approach of financial retirement, what we consider planning. Let's help these people out. Let's show them how we would do it to maximize tax savings. And to do that, you're just taking money out systematically over the course of retirement. It takes 7 to 10 years. And that's just the algorithm that there's not a lot more benefit stretching it that much farther in almost every case that we see. So when we're breaking these things down, we call it our tax plan. And really you can either convert it to a Roth, and that's great. You can do a Roth. The tax equivalent's the same, or you can just take it out and put it in an after-tax account if you plan on spending it. And either way, it's the same tax consequence, but we do it over the course of 7 to 10 years. And the reason people are like, I don't want to pay the tax. And I'm like, I know, I get it. I hate fluoride treatment too. And I hate having someone in my mouth poking around in there. I'm just, I don't like massages. I don't like being poked around. And it's just one of those things that I don't dig it, but it's got to be done. And if you don't get your teeth cleaned, you're going to get a cavity. And the cavity in the world of tax is the widow's penalty, right? The widow's penalty is what happens when a spouse passes and you go from a couple rate to single rate. You got to take the same amount of money out of the IRAs, but now you're going to double the rate. So instead of paying 10 or 15%, you may pay 20 or 25%. I mean, that's double. I mean, on $1 million IRA, that's an extra $100,000. Then you go to, okay, well, what about, when it goes to the kids? Well, the kids have to pay their tax rates, not mom and dad's. That's another one. We call that the kiddo's penalty. Again, the kids end up taking out at 30, maybe even 40% rates. Who knows? It depends on what's going on with your kids. Or if they take it all out in one lump sum, it's all going to be added into one single tax year, which is a bummer, but that's what they do. And when that happens, you're going to end up losing an extra $100,000, $200,000. So we're talking about $1 million IRA. We're talking about swings of $200,000, $300,000 of lost tax savings, all because you didn't want to brush your teeth and go get a tax, get in there and get that cleaning every year. And that's kind of what tax planning is about. It's never that exciting. I'm not like, can't wait to go do some tax planning with Golden Reserve. Like, no, it's not exciting. We're not picking stocks and getting returns, but we are saving tens, if not maybe possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of time on these IRAs and 401ks, just because we're doing the little things that matter that most financial professionals don't. They just don't take the time to get in there, get their hands dirty, build the tax plans, and then update them every year because accounts go up and down, tax laws change. So every year, our team of CPAs help us rebuild these plans so that they're updated, live, and hopefully maximizing savings for every one of our retirees, because that's how you guarantee, that you're adding value. You're adding substantial value by helping people address one of the largest tax liabilities on their balance sheet. And it's the first one we do is at no charge. It's part of every roadmap.
Greg, it tells this every show, I think, that everybody tells you how to put money in. Nobody tells you how to take money out. And it's such a true statement, because we've been told, save, save, save. What is the vehicle they gave us to save in? 401k. And that means all this tax problem happens to us as we get into our 70s. Let's head that off. Let's have a plan for it. And let's figure out at what level you want to be. Maybe you convert half of the money that you have in your 401k. Give us a look on our website. It's getyourroadmap.com. Somebody wrote into the Yahoo Finance advice column, says, I'm 70 years old. I have $1 million in my 401k. I want to give my son $200,000 inheritance now, but can I truly afford it? What does he need to be talking about? What does he need to consider when asking that question, Greg?
Okay, let's break this into two different buckets. Let's talk about the can I afford it's a financial.
Okay.
And then the other is legal and tax. Okay. And I think the legal and tax is where there's a lot of confusion, and it's pretty black and white. So let's get that done. That's easy. Mm-hmm. Can I afford it is a little trickier question that I think is more emotional than it is financial, but we'll hit both. And I think it's a great story. Hey, Randy, great job. This is a great story. There's a lot of meat on this bone. Okay. So when we think about gifting, we think about everyone's like gift tax, right? Everybody thinks gift tax. And I would ask, do you know anybody that's ever paid gift tax? And the answer is probably no. And the reason being is that there are huge thresholds. Now, I know a lot of people are like, Greg, I can only give $19,000 a year in 2025. Or if you're a couple, $38,000, right? Like I can give that to as many people as I want, but then I have to pay gift tax. That's wrong. That's 100% wrong. You don't have to pay gift tax what happens is if you give someone more than $19,000 a year, it eats up your federal exemption, which makes it sound really confusing because it is. You know what your federal exemption is, Randy?
I don't.
13.9 million per person, or
Okay.
27.9 million per couple. So you are not paying a dollar of tax if you don't give away. If you give away less than $13.9 million, Randy, over the course of your lifetime, you're not going to pay any gift tax.
Okay.
You feeling pretty good?
I'm feeling better about this
Feeling
already.
safe? You feeling
Yeah.
safe?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
that's the first question we get when I want to give my kid a house or a farm or these cash payments every year. And it's fine. If you want to give your grandkids, each, $19,000 and put it in a 529 or some kind of plan, that's great. And you can do that. And that's going to be the safest thing possible. But for most people, I think some context is important. You're not going to pay gift tax unless you're an ultra high net worth individual that has more than, at this point, Jiminy Christmas. If you're married, you're going to have almost $30 million. So I think you should be talking to your tax professionals and kind of breaking that down for other tax planning reasons. But for everybody else, the other 99.9% of Americans, you're not going to pay gift tax, unless the laws drastically change. It's just not an issue. And a lot of times people get hung up on it, but it's just one of those things where you just want to make sure people understand how it actually works. And just so you know, the giver pays gift tax, right? That's another trick that most people don't realize. It's not the receiver, it's the giver that pays gift tax in America. So that's the not practical tax. It doesn't come up, right? People aren't like, oh man, I can only give away 20 million this year. Man, it's going to be tight. No one says that. None of our clients are jammed up because of those thresholds. But what does jam them up and is separate, they are two different operations. One is operated by the IRS, the federal government. The other is regulated state to state. And it's usually your Department of Job and Family Services, and that is Medicaid. Now, this is where you do get jammed up. And people are like, well, what do you mean? Well, if you have $1 million, as this gentleman said, and you give away 500,000 and you go into a nursing home and you need to go into Medicaid because you run out of money, they're going to look back 5 years. And if they see a gift, it may have been exempt for tax purposes, but it's not exempt for Medicaid qualification purposes. So when you start giving things away, they basically take the value of the gift and they divide it by the average monthly cost of skilled care in that state, $6 or $7 grand. And that's how many years they won't pay for your care and they will evict you. And if you don't believe that happens, eviction things happen all the time in our world, in estate planning and elder law. And most people don't go on Medicaid when they go into nursing homes, but when you're paying $10,000 a month, you run out of money quickly. And if you're in a nursing home for 2, 3, 5, 7, 10 years, that's $100,000 a year. You can impoverish your spouse, all kinds of things. And these are all the tricky parts of gifting. We did a show, I don't know, it was a week or two ago with Tim, and we did a huge segment on gifting was the number one mistake people make. So make sure you have an estate planning attorney and accountant involved before you make substantial gifts. That's just rule of thumb advice. Don't rely on Chip, your financial advisor, because they always seem to screw it up because they don't think of all the issues. They just think of, oh, no, you can give this. And it's like, well, what about Medicaid? They just look at you like, what do you mean Medicaid? Oh, they got plenty of money. Yeah, they got enough money for 3 years. What's going to happen in years 4 and 5 if they need care? So all things that, revolve around why you need a well-rounded team of professionals. If financial isn't enough, legal isn't enough, tax isn't enough. You need all three together. They all have to play together to make the right recipe for surviving and thriving in retirement. Now, the will I make it kind of question. And, this is more emotional than I think financial. And I know people are going to roll their eyes, but it is. Some people aren't comfortable without a certain amount of money in their checking account. Some people aren't going to be comfortable without a certain amount of money in their savings account. I love the idea of strategically well-planned lifetime gifts because I think you get to watch people enjoy your money. I think that's some of the fun. And if you know and are confident in your spending, you should be able to give chunks away during your lifetime with the right planning if you have enough saved. And this gentleman, is kind of a loaded question. I don't know what his expenses are. I don't know what his goals in retirement are. I don't know how much he wants to travel. So you can't really answer it blanketly like, yeah, you can give him 200 grand. But for most people, if you're spending within your means and you don't have a lot going on and you're spending $70,000 or $80,000 a year and you got $50,000 or $60,000 of income coming in on Social Security with you and you and your spouse, you're in really good shape. You're just in really good shape. And you can probably be a little bit more aggressive on lifetime gifts. But again, without getting advice from all the right parties and all understanding all the consequences, there's never going to be someone that says, Randy, do it, right? you're going to have to take the information you have and then make the decision. It's not going to be like, yes, we determine the answer is yes. We determine the answer is no. No, it's going to be like, here's some of the possible risks. Here are the possible upsides. And then you get to weigh those and you make a calculated decision. That's how gifting works. It's not going to be an easy yes or no Excel sheet question. It's going to be a life decision. And hopefully, this person's getting the right advice and they're not going and just hearing some financial goofball give them just the investment breakdown of what his Monte Carlo analysis looks like for the next 20 or 30 years.
When I think about this guy, you got $1 million in a 401k. He mentioned that. So really he has 700,000. And now he's thinking about giving away 200. So if you looked at him and said, are you sure you want to give away half of your 401k? That might change his opinion just a little bit.
100%, right? People don't realize that Uncle Sam, part of that's a loan from Uncle Sam. That's a hard reality. People are like, I got $1 million IRA. It's like, no, you don't. It's like 750 probably. Like, what do you mean? It's just a feeling hurter because you've been staring at that statement for so long.
Yep.
Those Twinkies been locked away, Randy.
Don't always come back to the Twinkie today. GetYourRoadmap.com is the website that we have. GetYourRoadmap.com. Just go there and you'll find a place where you can put some information in there. That'll give us what we need to give you a call and say, okay, what are you concerned about? How can we help? Let's see if we're a good fit together. Well, we have gone through a lot of ups and downs and crazy stuff in the economy. I mean, in April, the market went down 20% and then it recovered. And now we're at all-time highs. And we're bouncing all over the place. And so a study was asked financial advisors, hey, have you changed your retirement planning due to the current economy? 65% of financial advisors said yes, they have. And many of them are using a strategy that they've never used before, an annuity. I laughed when I read this. So, Greg, what is the big deal here? You've got financial advisors that usually didn't use them, and now they are. What is it all about? Interest rates? What is it? What are we seeing here?
We're not like I told you so, guys, are we?
Yes, we are.
Are we?
Sure, let's do it.
I wrote a book a handful of years ago that talked about this.
Yep.
And said this is where it was going. And it makes sense, right? Like if you guys don't remember, about 15 years ago, we were big into ETFs and index funds because they were cheap. And all the financial advisors hated them. They said they had all these models that shows all the bad things that happen. Well, guess what? Everyone uses direct indexing ETFs and indexes now almost laughably. And then everybody said annuities were bad. They're terrible. They're spawns of Satan. Like, oh no, the annuities are coming. And, at the end of the day, if you, again, turn down the noise and just be like, all right, what is it? What is an annuity? Because my favorite game was we'd be driving and people don't know what I do for a living. And some like, I hate annuities. I'm like, really, man? I was like, cool. I was like, what is an annuity? And they'd be like, no idea. No idea. I have no idea what it is, but I hate it. I'm like, all right, well, cool. What do you hate about it? I don't know. I'm just supposed to hate it. Chip told me to hate him, so I'm going to hate him. So I think it's important in this show to kind of break down. So let's break down what an annuity is. Let's just break it down so it's easy for the listener. If you're listening, like, dude, I don't really know either. I just know that I hate them. All right, well, maybe you'll hate them after I explain them. I don't know, but at least you know what they are. An annuity is an insurance product. And many times it has certain components that allow for things that are different than riding the stock market. A lot of times people are in the stock market, they're going up and down. So over the years, it doesn't surprise me that the percentage of financial advisors using annuities is growing because annuities have gotten smarter. Fixed index annuities haven't been around that long. I don't recall the year, but it's only been 20 or 30 years. So they're relatively new. So they're getting smarter and smarter and smarter as the market kind of tells the insurance companies what they want. But some of the big components of annuity that are universal, and when I say annuity, I'm not talking about variable annuities. I'm talking about fixed annuities or fixed index annuities. FIAs are the popular annuities that most people are talking about. And the way they work is, the most important thing is they have 100% principal protection, meaning that that no matter what, your money doesn't go backwards. That is an appealing feature that resonates with a lot of retirees. Now, that's the insurance company's promise. Next, they grow tax deferred. So what that means is when you get interest every year, whatever that may be, it isn't taxed. It's only taxed when you bring it out. So you're getting interest on interest growth, which is nice. You're getting some compounding and not having to pay taxes everywhere. Because if you ever had a CD or a savings account, you get a 1099 every year. You have to pay interest on those returns. In a fixed index annuity world or annuity world, you don't. They actually compound until you take it out. When you take it out, you pay your tax on it. Now, that's a nice feature. Obviously, the guaranteed principal protection is a nice feature. It locks in returns. Another thing is, so when let's say it's a product that gets 7% a year or something. If you get 7% and the next year it goes backwards, all of your gains are locked in, which is another nice thing that people like about annuities. You're never going to go backwards. One of the final things that I like about annuities, unlike the bond market and CDs, and I've talked about this a lot, is that you get almost all annuities. I can't say all of them because there's thousands of them, but the ones that we use and the ones that I'm familiar with all have access features where you can get up to 10% out a year. It's kind of nice to know that if something comes up that year, I can pull 10% out and I don't get any penalty. I don't lose any of the returns. I don't have any, a lot of times CDs, if you take them out early, you lose the interest on them and all kinds of stuff. So that's a nice access feature that they've listened to the market and they've adjusted. Now, what's the rub? What's the hook? In exchange for all these promises that the insurance company has given the public, you're going to limit some of the returns, right? Like that's the give and take here. So the way annuities work is you can pick a fixed rate, which I haven't looked this week yet, but I believe you're hovering around 4 or 5% is where they're at for fixed rate annuities. And then you have fixed index annuities where you can mirror an index, an S&P 500 or something that looks like that. And it's called a cap. And the way that cap works, and that's the way most people use fixed index annuities, is that if the industry goes up 15%, and you have a 10% cap, you make 10%. If the market goes up 7%, you get 7%, 4%, 4%. If it goes back 30%, you get 0%. So that nature of having a cap limits your upside. But in exchange for that limited upside, you have the downside protection. And many retirees are saying, I like 10% returns. That's good enough. That feels like I get a little bit more than a money market. I get almost twice what a money market's paying, and I get no downside. But if the stock market goes down, I know I get zero. I get zero that year. If the stock market has a bad year, that index that I'm riding has a bad year, I get zero. And most retirees like that exchange. Now, I don't think annuities should be the only thing you have in your portfolio. I don't think it's the sole tool, but I think it's a tool that should be considered regularly. For most retirees, it's a nice alternative to having to not use bonds or structured notes or more advanced, what I'd consider fixed income or safer investment type options.
Well, one of the things about investing is that there are things that work for a while and there are things that don't. I mean, how long ago were we investing in NVIDIA? Well, that's just been something that's been in the last 5 to 6 years, maybe. And in the same way, when interest rates went up, a lot of people started looking at annuities. And many of these financial advisors, to their credit, are opening their eyes to a way to help you in retirement along these lines. Something to certainly ask about when it comes to
I want an apology,
income planning.
Randy.
I know you do.
I want an apology.
In triplicate. Thank you very much. Give us a call. Give us a look at our website. Let's sit down and talk about your paycheck in retirement and how to develop that. GetYourRoadmap.com is our website. GetYourRoadmap.com. So President Trump is considering an executive order that would allow private equity offerings in your 401k. Rebecca Walzer was on Fox Business and saying she thinks this should come with a little bit of a warning label.
I'm not against private equity, absolutely. But to give private equity to every investor in their 401k when they have no understanding of the risk level that it could be, but they just say, hey, this is what you do, automatically enroll, automatically contribute, and don't worry about it. Just set it and forget it. And that's not something you can do with private equity.
All right, Greg, we've talked about this before. They've thought about putting Bitcoin in 401ks, and now there's IPOs that might go in there, private equity. Can you tell me exactly what private equity is, and why is Rebecca saying this is a risky thing? You should really watch it if this is in your 401k.
So I have a little PTSD, Randy. I don't know if you know this, but I did all private equity work my first 5 years out of law school. So I was up in Chicago working for one of the largest law firms in the world doing exclusively private equity work. So I'm very familiar what these companies do. And they buy companies. They buy and sell companies. In short, these institutions, they raise money. They get money from insurance companies and institutions and individuals, very wealthy individuals. And they have these funds and they buy companies and they try to hold them typically 3 to 5 years and then they sell them. And a lot of times they sell them to other private equity companies. Or, it's the opposite. When you're an entrepreneur and you have the opportunity to sell your company, you can sell it to a private equity company, or you could do an IPO and become a publicly traded company. So those are ways to monetize your company as owners. So private equity is a little bit of a dangerous game right now. I think they're reinventing themselves. If people follow this, one of the things that really frustrate people against private equity, including myself, is that they have a tax loophole that affords a lot of tax savings for them. It's called carried interest. And what it really means in English, I'm not going to go into the great details between the GPs and the LPs, but the way they sell their companies, they actually get capital gains tax treatment instead of ordinary income treatment for a lot of their revenue in private equity owners. And it's an interesting loophole that if it gets closed, it could be a huge hit to that market, because you can think of the tax rates going quickly from 25% to 40%. And depending on what state you lived in, it could be even worse. Now, the reason I don't like private equity going into 401ks is, one, it's a long-term investment. Those funds are 4 or 5 years. So it could be a strange way of monetizing and getting money in and out, like a REIT, where people are familiar with other longer hold investments for private placements and things like that. It just comes with some bells and whistles and some level of sophistication that probably most of the market doesn't have an appetite for. I think this is driven more because the private equity market's tightening up and they're having trouble raising funds and they're having trouble getting more money, and they're trying to now take some of that out on the public and hedge some of their risk out into the public. And I don't like that. I don't like them trying to take advantage of, Jack and Jill and ordinary working folks. And then now all of a sudden they're doing this under the guise of big returns. But I don't think that's how it works. You've had a 50-year run where you haven't shared any of your fortunes, and now all of a sudden you're feeling altruistic. It just doesn't feel good to me. I don't like alternative investments for almost anyone under, let's call it $3 or $4 million. I just don't think the level of complexity is worth it. If you have 10 million bucks, and yeah, sure, you have luxuries of having different types of investment portfolios, but your planning's different. People don't realize, well, Greg, why do they get it and I don't? Because they're not going to spend all their money, and it's generational. So you can start thinking in terms of 100-year investment timelines versus 15 years. So that is different, and it's a different tax issue. They have estate tax issues. They have things that are just different. It's a different animal planning for a high net worth individual that has $10, $20 million versus someone that has $2 or $3 million.
Am I right, Greg? If you wanted to go to a financial advisor and they started talking to you about private equity, you would have to be a qualified investor, which means you have to have a certain income level and a certain amount in savings. And it's like $1 million and more. And so that's what this is built for. It's not necessarily built for the average person just putting in $150 every month or $200 every month in their 401k.
That's correct. It's called an accredited investor.
Okay.
Is the magic language. You'll sign an attestment that says, I attest that I have this amount of net worth, et cetera, income or net worth, to be able to be, I guess, once you have enough money, I guess they just assume that you're accredited. And so you just got to be careful. If you're signing that type of documentation, it's because you're in an investment that's more complicated and probably has more risk. A lot of times those things are to say that, hey, we told you so. You said you were accredited. You could handle the risk. Or you could handle losing it. So I think those are dangerous. Again, what are we doing here? It's like we're trying to get to retirement and spoil the grandkids. Like, do we really need to be in private equity funds that have different shelf lives with different, alternative investments that may or may not make an extra 1 or 2% a year? And then who knows what the cost is, right? These things could be a fortune to get in and out of. And I'm sure they have pretty hefty minimums and hold periods. So all that stuff is reasons why I'd say just buyer beware. I'm not going to tell you what to do with your money. Never have on this show, never will. But I would say you should do things that make sense and coincide with your goals. And I just don't see a lot of people's goals requiring private equity, investment. 1, do the risk. 2, do the complication. 3, due to the minimums. At least for most people that we talk to, the market risk report, a lot of times, Randy, will break these things down. If you don't know what you have, sometimes just an education on the types of investments you have on your portfolio is why people come in and get a roadmap. It's like, can you just explain this to me in English? Because I feel like I've been talking to this guy for years and I still don't really understand what I have and how these things work, or what's a fund of funds, or what's this ETF or index, or what's a structured note, or what's a buffered ETF, or there's a lot of buzzwords out there and a lot of people don't understand the realities of what they are. And I think our superpower is explaining things in ways people can understand, Randy.
This is another one of the advantages, I think, to sit down a couple of years before retirement. You got a runway of, 2, 3, 4 years before you're going to retire. and then something like this pops up in your 401k. Now you've got a retirement planner on your side and say, hey, this just popped up. Is this something I should be investing in? Should I put some money there in my 401k? And then we can talk through that. That's another great advantage to having Golden Reserve on your side. Give us a look. Give us a call. Here's our website, getyourroadmap.com. Getyourroadmap.com. So one of the things about getting close to retirement is you keep tabs on your mom and your dad. Are they doing okay? Do they remember what they're supposed to be doing and all that kind of thing? And then you start mixing with some of your parents' friends. And comedian Kathleen Madigan did just that. She went out with her mom on a weekly golf outing, and this is what she experienced.
I meet all of her friends. I get in the golf cart at 7:40 a.m. I go, Mom, your friends are a lot of fun, but what exactly is wrong with that lady, Mary Beth? She goes, oh, well, she's hammered. I said, dear Mom, it is 7:40 in the morning. She goes, well, we don't have a relationship with time anymore, Kathleen. We don't really live within time. We're like out of time. We're in a different dimension than you people that are in real time. She goes, I mean, some days we wake up at 3, some days 6. I mean, today I've already had lasagna.
Is that Big John and Sandy? Talk to me, Greg.
Oh gosh, sort of, right? My dad is the fire bomber, right? Where he'll be like, have something to say, and it'll be the middle of work day. It'll be Tuesday at 2, and I'll see the phone ring, and it'll be my dad, and I see a voicemail, and then I'll get an email, and then I'll get 2 texts that are like, did you get my call? I'm like, no, the internet's broken, Dad. Phone lines must be down. So that's my dad's superpower is the ability to basically, passenger pigeon. He may be just cruising by, that's Big John. But we spend a lot of time with my parents. I love hanging out with my mom and dad. We play a lot of cards together. You can imagine playing euchre with the family. My daughter plays now, so that makes it a lot of fun to hang out with mom and dad. But I do think, checking in on mom and dad in a serious note is super important. As, estate planning and elder law attorneys, people talk about money. It's always about investments, and it's always about, where to do taxes or da-da-da. But the reality is like, isn't their safety the most important thing that we should be thinking about here? And I think we've all gone through a loved one who had a decline, right? Whether it be mentally or physically, couldn't get around, had trouble. My Annie, who took care of me as a kid when my parents went back to work, she was my great aunt, and Annie Thora, by the way. And she had a decline where we went in, and she had a pristine house. It was always very clean. And then all of a sudden, at the end, we were noticing like things in the oven or things in the microwave that they just forgot about, and you just knew that time, Father Time had been leaning on her a little too much. And it was a sad moment, but because we were always around, we spotted it and said, you know what, we need to do some things and handle some support, getting some, people bringing her lunch over or dinner over to the house. And I think there are a lot of things people can do to help mom and dad stay in place longer. The number one thing that causes a long-term care event, a nursing home event, is a fall. And when you break a hip, and a lot of times that trauma, because what it does, I'm not a doctor, but like, I've done this long enough to at least describe what happens is that those people that are having, mental decline issues, whether it be Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, they familiarize themselves with a routine, and it's very simple to kind of fake it. They can play in their routine very well. They've done it. They do it for years. But then all of a sudden they break their hip and they're in a nursing home, and everything is exacerbated, and they're completely out of their routine. And then all of the real mental downfall and issues come to life. And then they never leave. They're in the nursing home for the rest of their lives because they can't be released back on their own because they're out of their routine. So my number one advice is like thinking about all the little things, the walk-in showers, the handrails, icing, the stairs. I mean, stairs are like the voodoo, right? Like that's one of the hardest things. Can we find ways to move bedrooms or move mom and dad to single floors? Like these are the things that keep mom and dad, home longer, which is what everybody wants. No one's like, I can't wait to go to a nursing home, right? Like that's not like anyone's dream to round out how they leave this world. And I think if you can do those little things, as estate planning and elder law attorneys, there's a lot of important ways you can check in on mom and dad, and you continue to give those extra touches. And, hopefully they got their planning in place too. Like we not, legally make sure they have their power of attorneys, their healthcare power of attorney, their financial power of attorney, wills, trusts. Do they have a nursing home insurance? Do they have nursing home asset protection trust? What are the ways to get involved? And the more you can get going, it makes the traumatizing event itself easier to navigate. So if you can do little things to make the worst day of your life a little easier, I think you should do them. And that type of news is always up there as one of the worst days of your life when mom or dad have that event. And if you can have planning and a team in place that can run with a lot of the minutia there, it takes a lot of stress off the family and it lets them focus on the things that matter versus being reactive. And all of a sudden, no one's done anything. No one knows where anything is. No one knows the bank accounts. No one knows who the power of attorneys are. No one knows what mom and dad's wishes were. Those are the harder situations that we come across as estate planning and elder law attorneys. So if you can get those questions answered, I know it's not a fun conversation, but it's a grown-up conversation, right? Like you got to have it. You got to, hey, mom, dad, I know you don't want to talk about this. I know you're private. Baby boomers are much easier to deal with. The greatest generation was really hard to deal with. About 20 years ago, when we started this practice 15 years ago, it was really hard because there was a lot of, greatest generation and they were super private. And it was like, it's taken care of. And then it was never taken care of. They had like a will that was 40 years old. And I think baby boomers do a much better job of communicating with their kids and looping them in and getting them involved at least at some level. Like you don't have to tell them how much money they're going to inherit. They don't have to tell them where your money goes, but you can at least let them know who the players are, who the accountants are, who the financial advisors are, et cetera, all that stuff. Will make all those situations easier. That's my big, if you want to put some pressure on mom and dad, those are the things that hopefully make it a little more seamless, Randy, when it comes to planning. And that's why all of our roadmaps and why our team has a team of estate planning elder law attorneys and a lot of the offices down the hall, across the Midwest, we have attorneys down the hall because you can't do retirement planning without the legal and without talking about this stuff and the end of life things, because that is part of retirement. And we know that it gets overlooked and then it gets really screwed up at the end where their money doesn't go where it wants to go or how it should go. All those things should be factored in, Randy. They're very important to have a successful retirement plan.
Well, if you're relating to what Greg said there and you've been going through this experience yourself, or you have some friends or some other relatives that are going through it, you know what this is all about. And it needs to be a part of the retirement planning conversation. And then if it's in your family, then it might be something that you're headed for as well. So that's going to take some planning too. So it's certainly a part of our roadmap for retirement. Every roadmap for retirement talks about a long-term care plan or strategy. Give us a call, give us a look on our website, which is getyourroadmap.com. That's getyourroadmap.com. That is all the time we have on today's Fire Your Financial Advisor. We will be here next week. We hope you will be too.